Hey everyone. So, over the last few years, I'm sure you've seen those incredible images of Sikh Australians stepping up during the bushfires, during the pandemic, just providing massive amounts of aid. But here's the thing, that spirit of service, it isn't a new story. Today we're going to dive deep into the hidden history of one of Australia's oldest communities.
You know, this quote from a community manager down in Melbourne, it nails it, right? When a crisis hits, the Sikh community mobilizes. We're talking thousands of free meals cooked, groceries delivered, help offered with absolutely no questions asked. They've really become a cornerstone of Australia's emergency response.
And that really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. Is this something new, or is it just the latest chapter in a story that stretches back almost 2 whole centuries? I think the answer might just change how you see Australia itself. So let's get into it.
Okay, to find the answer, we have to rewind the clock, and I mean way back. We're not talking about the 1970s or even the 50s. Nope, we're going all the way back to the mid-1800s, when a lot of Australia was still just being mapped out. What's just staggering about this timeline is how early these dates are. The very first known Sikhs to arrive was way back in 1844. Just a couple of decades later, they were playing this essential role as cameleers, literally opening up the heart of the country. By the 1890s, you have this whole network of Sikh entrepreneurs. This was a thriving, well-established community, right up until 1901, when one single policy brought everything to a screeching halt.
So these cameleers, they were basically the lifeblood of the interior. Think about it, in a continent that's too dry for horses and bullocks, camels were the only way to explore and develop. So these men, a lot of them Sikhs, they're the ones hauling heavy equipment for mining and helping build things like the overland telegraph line. They even helped build that legendary railroad from South Australia all the way to the Northern Territory. And in fact, that train is still called the Gun today, in their honor.
And it wasn't just the camels, you also had the hawkers. These guys were, for all intents and purposes, the Amazon of their day for the Australian bush. For these incredibly isolated families, their arrival was a huge deal. It was a real connection to the outside world. They brought goods, they brought news, and they brought stories from the other side of the world, becoming these really trusted and welcome figures in rural communities.
So here's the crucial thing to understand. These weren't just business deals. Out of all this pioneering work, these deep personal and community bonds started to form, weaving this whole new thread into the cultural fabric of the country.
Let me tell you this amazing story. It's the 1970s. A Sikh man is just standing in a line in Fremantle, over in Western Australia, when an Indigenous elder walks up right behind him.
So the elder offers him the traditional Sikh greeting, Sas Shri Akal. And then he explains that he's the famous playwright Jack Davis, and that his grandfather was a Sikh man named Bung Singh. I mean, wow, that one single moment reveals this whole hidden history of intermarriage and shared culture that's been almost completely forgotten.
It starts with a man named Bung Singh, one of those early Sikh pioneers. He has a son, William, and William's son grows up to be the great Jack Davis. You can literally trace this legacy of resilience from an Outback pioneer to a champion for Indigenous rights. It's amazing.
This quote just perfectly captures the heart of that rediscovered connection. When researchers finally met Bung Singh's descendants, the family elder, Rose Davis, she didn't see strangers, she saw a family. And her words, meet properly, just bridged generations of separation in a single, powerful moment.
And that just perfectly illustrates the point, right? These individual stories, like Bung Singh's, they were the seeds. They were the seeds from which entire communities grew, putting down really, really deep roots. And we can see exactly how that process worked in a place like
Woolgoolga in New South Wales. So after World War II, the banana farms there were desperate for workers. And Sikhs who'd been working on nearby sugarcane fields saw their chance. They started out as labourers, but through just incredible hard work and community spirit, they started buying the farms for themselves. And by 1968, they had built Australia's very first Gurdwara, the temple, creating this thriving little Punjab right there on the coast.
But the Sikh contribution goes even deeper, and it goes right into one of the most sacred parts of Australian identity, its military history. And honestly, this might be the most surprising part of the whole story.
379. That's how many men from the 14th Sikh Regiment were killed fighting side by side with Australian and New Zealand troops, the Anzacs, in a single day at Gallipoli. Just let that sink in for a second. On June 4, 1915, the regiment was almost completely wiped out. They were brothers in arms with the Anzacs in the very battle that, for so many people, defines what Australia is.
So why? Where does this willingness to serve come from? Well, it stems from a core concept in Sikhism, the Sant Sipahi, which means the saint soldier. It's this philosophy that combines a spiritual life with a martial duty to stand up for justice and to defend anyone who can't defend themselves. This idea helps explain why Sikhs, who were only 2% of India's population back then, made up a third of its volunteer army in World War I.
And that service didn't stop. In World War II, you have Flying Officer Manmohan Singh, one of the first Indian pilots ever trained by the Royal Air Force. He died in Broome, Western Australia, during a Japanese attack, defending Australian soil.
Okay, so this brings us to the big question, the real climax of our story. If Sikhs were pioneers and community builders and legitimate war heroes, why on earth don't we know this history? Why was it so completely erased?
Well, the answer's right here. In 1901, the brand new Australian Federation passed the Immigration Restriction Act. We know it today as the White Australia Policy. And it was designed with one explicit goal: to create a white Australia by shutting down all non-European immigration. For that vibrant, established Sikh community, it was like a door slamming shut in their face.
And this just created this incredibly painful contradiction. You had men who had literally fought and bled for the British Empire and for Australia itself, who were then told, sorry, you're not welcome here. They were denied citizenship, they were often denied the right to own land, and this is the critical part, they couldn't bring their wives and children to join them. So many of them died lonely deaths in a country they had given so much to build.
But the story doesn't end there. After the policy was finally dismantled in 1973, the communities started to grow again, and they carried with them the legacy of all those who came before. And this is what brings us full circle, right back to today.
And this is where it all clicks into place. That incredible resilience of the Outback pioneer, that generosity of the hawker who was a lifeline to the bush, that profound sense of duty of the saint soldier, these aren't just footnotes in a history book. They are the living, breathing roots of the modern Sikh principle of seva, which means selfless service.
And this idea is most powerfully expressed through langar. This is the tradition in every single Sikh temple all over the world to offer a free meal to anyone who walks through the door. It doesn't matter who you are, what you believe, where you're from. And it's not charity, it's this radical act of equality and service. So when you see Sikhs serving free curries during a bushfire, what you're really seeing is a 500-year-old tradition that's been a part of Australia for 180 of those years. So when we see those images of Sikhs serving the community in a crisis, it turns out it's not a new story at all. It's the re-emergence of a very, very old one. A story of service and resilience that was deliberately written out of our national story for decades. And that leaves us with one last, really crucial question. If this one incredibly rich story was hidden in plain sight all this time, what other foundational stories of the people who built this country are still out there, just waiting to be told?